I oppose any form of conscription. This is the most Reddit thing I've read in a long time. Everyone in the comments disagrees. Post has 80k upvotes. That is also very Reddit. Unpopular opinion here, but I think the government should dictate every aspect of everyone's lives and execute any of those dirty trolls whining about civil liberties and human rights.
6. Not mandatory, but there was a voluntary program like this in the U.S. in the Depression. It was called the Civilian Conservation Corps. Participants got room and board, clothing, job training, and $30 a month, of which $25 had to be sent home. Most were single young men, so it went to their parents and younger siblings, in exchange for working on various projects on public land throughout the country. The reasons for it were both to provide jobs and because the Dust Bowl had opened people's eyes to the fact that the U.S. was not a bottomless well of natural resources. Erosion was a big cause of the Dust Bowl, and the Dust Bowl was a factor in the Depression, so it all tied together. They were also called Roosevelt's Tree Army, because one of the big things they did was plant trees for erosion control. In my state, they built most of the state parks, a lot of them in areas that had been deforested for charcoal manufacturing and were marginal for agriculture. You can still rent out cabins that they built, and they're great, really attractive, and shockingly inexpensive. I'm actually going to stay in one next week. Some of them have photos from the CCC days on the walls, and it's really neat to look at them and know that you're still enjoying what they worked on. I definitely support a program like that today, but I think making it voluntary is putting ethical considerations to one side. More practical for one thing, you would have to pay participants just like people drafted for military service get paid, and it would be very expensive if everyone did it. Plus, having it be voluntary means the number of participants can be matched the amount of meaningful work to be done, and the workers are more motivated. With the CCC, people considered themselves lucky to be picked. $30 a month was an attractive wage, and 3 square meals every single day was a significant perk. So discipline was straightforward: do what you're supposed to do or get kicked out, and most people didn't want to get kicked out. It would probably take stronger incentives to get the same level of buy-in today, but health care and student loan forgiveness would be a good start. Edit: a number of people have asked about how you rent the cabins I mentioned. The ones I'm familiar with are in Pennsylvania and can be reserved at https://pennsylvaniastateparks, reserveamerica.com. Not all cabins are CCC built, but ones listed as rustic often are. Check individual park websites for details. There's usually a «Stay the Night» page with information on the cabins, and sometimes a «History» page that will talk about CCC's role in the park. Rates are based on the number of beds in the cabin and start at $35 a night for cabins that sleep 4. Weekends and peak times are higher, and there is a surcharge if you're not a Pennsylvania resident. The system takes reservations up to 11 months in advance. Some parks fill up quickly. Some parks allow dogs in specific designated cabins, and most parks have at least one ADA-accessible unit. Other states and some national parks also have CCC-built cabins available for rental, but as far as I know there's no nationwide system to find out where they are. There are still programs like this around. AmeriCorps is the offspring of the CCC. Within AmeriCorps is the Conservation Corps. Members of the Conservation Corps do tons of habitat restoration, trail building, prescribed burns, etc. I was even on a crew that did wildlife research, but that isn't as common. That is super interesting. Thank you for this answer. I didn't know this.
I feel like forcing people to do it will just sour them against it. Also, I see people who make a career out of it fuck shit up all the time, and I can only imagine how unproductive a bunch of people who don't want to be there in the first place would be. And if people don't want to do it, the police will come in and enforce it by putting them in jail. And those who control the admissions will be taking kickbacks to let the rich or their friends' kids not having to do it.
Mandatory servitude is never a step in the right direction. I am really glad that most people are saying this. I had lower expectations from the Reddit crowd, but y'all proved me wrong. How do you enforce this mandatory servitude? Guns? That's a little steep for ducking tree planting day.
I wouldn't make it mandatory, but maybe optional, and have it cover some school for the adults once they are done. I like that a lot. I think a lot of people are taking issue with the mandatory part, which is fair. I figured that would be controversial. Incentivizing it definitely seems like a step in the right direction. Thank you for your smart answer.
That sounds like slavery with extra steps. Out of curiosity, do you feel that way about countries with mandatory military service, Norway, Korea, etc.? Somebody's getting laid in college. I don't support involuntary anything. Outside of vaccinations, education, and taxes, I agree with this. 100% agree. Cardiac muscle movement.
Posting this in US time zones was a bold move. I like to live dangerously. I feel like instead of forcing people to do so, they should be encouraged to. For example, if this was being forced by the state, instead of it forcing you to go, it would pay people to plant trees, clean beaches, etc. This is how you create jobs. The world's biggest economic demand should absolutely be its own well-being. If we don't have a planet, your money is worthless. We already have AmeriCorps, where you serve for very little compensation other than a stipend and some money for college. Someone suggested that awareness should be raised about this sort of program, and I think they were right. Thank you for contributing to the discussion. I've been thinking about joining AmeriCorps, but I feel like I missed the boat to do it by not taking a gap year before college. Can anyone give me advice one way or another if it is a good idea to take time off of real life before I turn 24 and hit the cutoff for NCCC?